Hi, I'm Leon Acord, and this is the pilot of Old Dogs and New Tricks, shot in May 2011. Although all these scenes were shot actually during WeHo Gay Pride 2011 in June. This shot was actually the last shot that we shot during the pilot shoot. It was very complicated, and I had a lot of challenges acting-wise, but the last shot came out so well. They were actually watching the replay in the camera, and it was a great sense when we realized that we had it. And by 2 a.m. that night, Arvin had a little teaser from it online, which we'll link. Here is Miss Lydia Lasker, played by Amanda Abel in her first appearance, and there's Damien Johns. You know, originally, and he immediately gets Nathan's attention. Originally, Damien's headshot had a post-it in the middle of it, and Arvin somehow, I don't know how, digitally removed it. And speaking of digital, we shot this on the roof of a Ralph's grocery store, and look at the sky. See how blue it was? It was actually a really overcast day, but we thought it was very important to have a very blue California sky, so Arvin added that. This was actually the first scene we shot, the video. Our DP on the pilot was John Salmon and did a great job. And I love how Arvin made it look like 80s video. If you look at the very top of the screen, it has that kind of wavy video. He also does that with the Max and Me clip. Arvin's great at that kind of post-production, special effect, and very subtle stuff like that, and has been doing it all through the show. God love him. This was my very first scene that I shot on the very first day after we shot the video, and at the time it seemed really nerve-wracking, but looking back it seems rather tame compared to what's gone on since. This is Santa Monica Boulevard in the heart of gay West Hollywood, downtown West Hollywood they call it. We actually shot this driving in West Hollywood with a camera guy in the passenger seat. Kurt Bonham is Brad King in the first of many permeations of his apartment. Yeah, we've done, and that is Arvin Batista as the boy on the screen, his little Hitchcock cameo. We've recreated Brad's apartment 3 or 4 times, just twice in the first season, which we'll get into when we get to those scenes. These scenes we were actually driving in West Hollywood. We'll get back to that. Jeffrey Patrick Olsen. Muscles, the heart of Old Dogs and New Tricks. I killed my back shooting this scene, actually. I did about 80 sit-ups and threw my back out for about 2 weeks afterwards. And when I saw my doctor, I was so proud. I'm like, I did 80 sit-ups. And she pointed out that my abs didn't do the sit-ups, my back did the sit-ups. And here is Zay Rock, who actually shows up in season 2 as Rod Rodriguez, the porn star. I'd actually originally talked to Zay about playing Damien, and at the time, his girlfriend at the time talked him out of it. But by the time we got to shooting the pilot, he had a new girlfriend, Lori, who's very cool, and talked him into it, and so he came back as Rod. What could have been. Anyway, here we are back at this, but I'm not going to have time to talk about it, because we're going into Max and Me, starring Ross Stein, played by David Pevsner. This part was originally cast as with Jim J. Bullock, who dropped out I think it was about 2 to 3 weeks before we shot the pilot. I'd loved David's auditions as Brad and Muscles, so I immediately got on the phone to him. I didn't even freak out, which those who know me know that's not really my style. But just picked up the phone and called him, and he stepped right in, saved the show. I love this, another Arvin graphic, brilliant. This is actually our shooting crew outside of school shooting that scene. And the Flacinex commercial. Arvin again did a great job making this look like a really high-end, you know, 90s to 1990s TV commercial. We shot this at a hotel, Nathan's bedroom, which we've never seen since, and we've got a glimpse of his bathroom again in season 2. I got a lot of crap for this shot. Leon, why would you let it? And it's like, you know, this is, I was 47 at the time, 47 or 48, and we're back in downtown West Hollywood. Arvin promised me when we first started talking about the show that the first foursome shot would blow me away, and he delivered. I love this sequence. We shot this the last night of the first day of shooting. We were camped out at a Starbucks across the street in West Hollywood, and then we crossed here. This was Celebration Theater. That's Felipe Cherry, who shows up again as Blindfold Guy. The reason we did that at Celebration Theater is technically in Hollywood. The Starbucks is on the border of West Hollywood, and it's really tough to shoot in West Hollywood without permits. So we thought, well, we'll camp out there, and then the actual shooting we'll do over there where they can't touch us. And very grateful to Celebration Theatre for letting us shoot that. And here we are at the end of the pilot. And wow, flies by so fast it's hard to keep up. Anyway, the other episodes slow down, so we'll get caught up then. And welcome back to the second episode, but actually technically the first episode of Season 1 of Old Dogs and New Tricks. We shot these scenes at the lobby of the Two Roads Theater in North Hollywood. Wonderful man, the man who manages the theater, Rick Shaw. That's his real name. Well, I don't know if it's his real name. Just let us come in for the day and just take over and transform his theater into the lobby of this nightclub. This is the lobby of the theater, and we used the theater as a holding area. So all the extras and all the actors, when they were setting up the shot, were camped out in the theater. And here is Bruce Hart in his first appearance as Nelson Van Eddy. You know, I wasn't sure if it would work to bring a villain in this quickly when we hadn't really gotten to know the characters. But oh my God, he was popular from this very first appearance, and I love his work in the next episode with Michael Tatlock as Moses Decker, which we'll get to. In the background there you could see Dan Oliverio, who's going to pop up in Season 3 in a very mysterious role. And there is Kevin Sexton, who played Darren the waiter. And that story, actually, I was a reader at an audition at Celebration Theatre. Oh, you're an annoying little cunt, aren't you? That was another line we weren't really sure we could get away with. But so far, no complaints. Anyway, there's Kevin as Darren, and that story, I was a reader at an audition at Celebration Theatre. I've told this story before, I probably shouldn't tell it again. I was reading with an actress named Darren, and when she left, I said, well, nice to meet you, Darwood. And the 10 youngsters in the audience with the company looked at me like, what? Leon, what the hell's wrong with you? And they said, her name's Darren. And I'm like, none of you have seen Bewitched, and not one of them had. And it was like, okay, I'm really in Hollywood now. We shot this whole sequence in the basement of producer Matt Ladensack's home at the time. This was probably the longest scene to shoot to this day of the series because, I mean, it's 2 episodes and we usually take a day to shoot 1 episode. We shot all this in 1 day, though. 1 very long day. Because when you're doing a scene with all 4 of us, you know, you have to, the first shot is usually a shot of all 4 of us, and you do that several times, and then you do a shot of those 2, for example, on one end. Then you do a shot of, you know, 3 of the others, and then you might move into a close-up of those 2. So you're shooting the scene like 9, 10 times, well, more than that, probably 20 times, you know, bits and pieces sometimes, but often the whole scene, just, you know, from different angles. This cast and this crew, though, they are amazing, and it was tiring, but it wasn't tense. And you know, we're down in this basement, so it wasn't exactly deluxe accommodations. But Matt was really cool. Oh, Viagra. Matt Ladensack was a producer on the pilot in the first season, and was very instrumental in helping us getting the show up off the ground, and has gone on to become he directed a short film called Apple Tree, which stars, among other people, Rylan Shelton, who comes up in the next episode as Damian Johns. I love these lines with Brad. He's really great. He's really wonderful. Kurt Bonham, let me just say, is a fearless actor. He actually says that his favorite acting moments are when he's afraid and uncomfortable, like sex scenes, which he's very good at. There's nothing he won't do. And you know, the part of Brad was originally, when I was writing it, I was thinking Patrick Bristow, who actually turns up as Nathan's first bad shrink in the Season 1 finale, which we'll be getting to. He's, we'd crossed paths at a theater company, and as I was writing it, I kind of heard his voice, and so actually sent him scripts. And he sent me the sweetest, most supportive email back, and really loved the show, and said I'd love to come on as any other character, but because he does a lot of children's theater, was a little, not sure that the two would mesh well. So he actually did do our first table read with Jim J. Bullock as Ross. I really wish we'd videotaped that. Steve down in the basement. Here we are, Brad eating and smoking pot while searching for sex. This scene worried us the most. We actually cut it in half because we thought it was just far too explicit. YouTube would brand us as adult. As it turns out, they didn't, and so we released the whole uncut scene, and it's gotten like almost 3,000 views. It's a very popular scene. Botox. You know you're in LA now. And interestingly, Jeffrey is a doctor and does, I guess it's called injectables. Botox and...
You think I need Botox?
I don't know the rest of the names. He's very good at it, though. I'll be seeing him as soon as I work up the nerve and the bank account. I can't remember why, but there was a lot of discussion about that last sequence with the tequila. Do you drink it first? Do you throw the roses first? We had several versions of that last few moments in the rough cut stage. You know, I wish I had time to like acknowledge these people one by one, but it flies by so fast. Hopefully I'll hit them all through the course of the show. Okay, here we are, episode 3. This is the second part of the birthday. This is actually our lowest viewed episode, which is interesting to me because it's Tom Beard's debut as Bobby Burton. It is Ryland Shelton's debut in the flesh, it's not a photo, as Damien. And the episode before it did really well. I think the problem was we released this 2 days after the second episode, because at the time I'm like, people won't wait a whole week, they won't come back. Well, we should have waited. I think people just didn't expect another episode that soon, and live and learn. Jeffrey is wonderful, isn't he? I mean, this whole cast is great. I just love watching them, and they're just an amazing cast. This was Tom Beard's first scene as Bobby, and I don't know if you can see it in this sequence, but later in the finale, when they're in the gym, which we shot the same day as this sequence, you see him wearing jeans, and that caused some concern in the production offices when we noticed it. That was one of the few scenes I wasn't on set for, and if I had been, I would have run to Target and gotten him some sweats, but... So we're finally going to learn a little bit more about Ross. You know, you hear a lot about everyone else. This is really Pevsner's first moment where you get to know Ross and his situation. In the pilot, I had originally written in the story of how he had met Neil as his career was going down in the toilet and Neil's career was going up. But I had to cut it because it gave Ross about 3 times as much screen time as the other 2 characters in the pilot. Other 3 characters. And, yeah. Here comes one of my favorite sequences in the show. First of all, Bruce Hart is deliciously evil in this. Watch Bruce's face in this whole sequence, even as I'm talking to Moses. He's loving this, and I just love that he loves it. And Michael Tatlock as Moses Decker. I'd done a play, Carved in Stone, which I also produced, where I played Quentin Crisp, and he actually came close to coming in to be my understudy, but then he got a film role. Bruce Hart, so evil, but such a nice guy. That look on Michael's face cracks me up every single time. Actually, his name is actually a tribute to, not the Moses part, not the old part, but the last name Decker. I worked a lot in San Francisco at New Conservatory Theater, sorry about that, under the artistic director, Ed Decker, who was very supportive of me then and has been very supportive of the show. And, yeah, so I wanted to just put that in there. Because the first Moses is to refer to the age, but Decker's refers to the fact that he's Nathan's mentor, and this was a tough thing to do. 48, 49, 50. 50. Yeah, I love this sequence. I really do. I remember when I was writing it, this was like one of the scenes I kept going back to, thinking, I can't wait to shoot this scene, I can't wait to shoot this scene. And, yeah, and Michael totally delivered. I'd love to figure out a way to get that character back. And there it is! The big smooch. It was Arvin's note when we were shooting. Stick your elbows up to push him away so we can see you struggle. Arvin is like 99.8% right about all things. And even when I argue with him, my debate, things that I argue. Oh, and here he comes. Ryland Shelton. Ryland Shelton's first scene is Damien Johns. We'll come back to haunt Nathan. And, well, you know the rest, most of you. I'm assuming if you're watching this, it's because you've seen the whole show and want to learn more. Sneak in for a cigarette, the first of many cigarettes that Nathan does not get to light. And there's Pevs as Ross hiding out in the bathroom. And here's actually Matt Ladensack, one of the producers this season, on the left. With Trey Rich on the right, playing two really cruel, mean, young, typical young West Hollywood boys. This was a great, fun scene to shoot, and unfortunately, we actually had to cut some of it. David Pevsner had some wonderful moments that were really well acted and really dramatic, but because it took the scene to such a serious place, when the guys crash in, when they do in just a moment, it seemed odd that we suddenly went back to comedy. And so it's to David Pevsner's credit as a dramatic actor that we did cut those scenes. And I'd love to release that scene as it was originally written. We had to shoot this shot about 5 or 6 times because the candles kept blowing out. Either the wind from the door or when I was saying my lines at that point. Yeah. And here comes the infamous cake toilet, as Julie likes to call it. And yeah, this was the end of the two-parter. We actually almost cut these past 2 episodes after the pilot when we were thinking, what can we get away with? We didn't have any money, and we were how are we going to have what do we do next? We actually thought about skipping those 2 episodes and moving right into this next episode, Stuck in a Jam. But since you don't see the 4 guys together again the rest of the season in one shot, we thought, well, we should show the party. Stuck in a Jam. This episode. There's Miss Amanda Gary again as Lydia Lasker. This episode was actually kind of got a spike. A lot of the blogs picked up on it because it contained Tom Beard's first same-sex love scene in 20 plus, 30 plus years of being a gay actor. Sebastian Lacaze from Hustling, the series, actually mentioned this episode in an interview in Next magazine in New York, which also gave us a boost. So this one started to perform really well, almost a day or 2 after it was posted. I think a lot more gay blogs picked up on it, and I think it's our 3rd highest viewed of season 1, although you can't really count the pilot because it was that a lot earlier. All of this was green screen. We shot all of this. I think this was part of the first day as well of shooting season 1, not the pilot. And all of this was in the driveway at Matt Ladensack's house with the green screen, and Arvin laid in all of this. And I actually did have a viewer say, that was all laid in? I had no idea. And if you watch, there are a couple moments where you can tell, you'll notice no one in the cars behind them moved. They're frozen. But other than that, you'd have to be a really devoted fan of the show to watch it that many times and notice it. Arvin, again, does a fabulous job knocking this stuff out. And thank God we didn't have to drive again, from the pilot. Now I can talk about that scene in the pilot when we were driving around West Hollywood with the cameraman. No, I have to stop myself again. Do you notice what's dangling from Brad's rear view mirror? That was a touch of Kristen Gibbler, our season 1 production designer. I'm not going to tell you what they are. If you know what they are, then you're you get it. If you don't, I don't want to deflower you, so to speak. Anyway, and again, I'll get back to those driving scenes in a moment because pretty soon we have Felipe Cherry in his debut as blindfold guy, and he was actually in the pilot. He was the first guy in line, the first irate customer outside Club Torrid. Felipe is great in this scene and the scene in the next episode. He didn't audition. I wasn't sure how much experience he had, but he was so devoted. We actually called him our 5th dog because he actually had played an extra in 3 different scenes in the pilot, and showed up for the wedding episodes in season 2 and is always there for us. So I think he's wonderful in this sequence, and very brave. Anyway, getting back to the driving scenes in the pilot, we actually did shoot those driving in West Hollywood with the cameraman in the passenger seat and the director and the sound guy, Ty and Arvin, in the back seat, with me pretending to be talking on the phone and texting, which is really illegal. And West Hollywood and Beverly Hills, you cannot fart without getting pulled over and getting a ticket. Plus, we had some film taped to the windows for lighting purposes, which kept kind of peeling off and flapping in the wind, so... It's cool that we got those shots without getting stopped and ticketed or arrested. We learn a little more about Ross. You know, I have said that David Pevsner was a bit wasted, and I don't mean he showed up drunk in season 1, which is true. It took a long time to get his story going. You know, when you have 4 characters you're trying to introduce, I thought it was smart to start with Brad, the outrageous one, first. Start with the sweet guy second, and then really start getting into the story of the quote-unquote normal guy.
Who is it now?
Not normal. You know what I'm saying. Conventional. Arvin also is in charge of these great split screens. You know, I have to say, you know, when I was writing it, I was thinking I would be shooting this with like a handy cam and editing it on, you know, Windows Movie Maker. So the fact that it's not only shot so well, but all the effects and post-production are so incredible. I'm a very, very lucky guy. Tom Beards, the first sex scene coming up with Tom and Muscles. Was I on set for that? I don't think I was. No. We were all on set for this. We had a fireplace going, and it was very warm. And I don't think the fireplace was the only source of heat, if you know what I'm saying. Tom's a great sport about this. He was a little timid, but he did it anyway and threw himself into it, and actually went on to do some much more explicit stuff in season 2. And Jeffrey has never said any you know, actually none of the, well, almost none of the actors have ever hesitated about love scenes. At least in season 1, actually. I can't say in season 1 no actor complained about the love scenes. Everyone was fully on board, and it was cool. Yeah. Got some complaints, actually, that Nathan was kind of like only there for his friends, but that was intentional because I wanted, once the Damien storyline started, I wanted it to really be like, you know, like a revelation to Nathan, you know, like a total life-changing thing. I really wanted to show that Nathan really had a life and a good life, but wasn't really fulfilled. He wasn't really, there were areas of his life that were neglected, which I think by the season finale, which is coming up in just 3, 2, 1, here we go.
Take away my job.
The season 1 finale of Old Dogs and New Tricks.
Strip away my friends.
Our supersized finale, but as it turned out, would be the length of our average length second season episode. And here comes Patrick Bristow, the aforementioned almost Brad, who did come back to do the show as Nathan's first bad psychiatrist, Dr. Keebler. And actually, Patrick is probably the only actor to talk himself out of a job. I had planned that Nathan would have the same shrink who would pop up now and again. But while we were shooting this, Patrick said, you know, it'd be funny if Nathan had a series of shrinks, sort of like Murphy Brown's secretaries. And we loved the idea. And the fact that he calls Ross Russ, he actually did that when we were first running the scene for the camera before we started shooting. So I said, you know what, do that in the take, because, you know, if Nathan's going to fire you, give me as many reasons to fire you as you can. So he did. He's great in this scene and great to work with. We shot this, I think it was one of the first scenes we shot in the morning, and knocked it out in probably, I think, in less than an hour, because he's so good, and of course all I had to do was lay there. So, would love to work with him again. Terry Garber, of course, shows up in season 2's finale as Nathan's next celebrity shrink. So I guess in the season 3 finale, I'll have to write another crazy celebrity shrink. Anyway, this episode, the season finale, the pacing of this episode we really liked, and as we moved into season 2, we really wanted it to have more of the feel of this episode. Here is Philippe again, being brave. That is very brave. I would not. I mean, I would do a shot like that, but I would probably need a couple belts of booze first. Kurt's great in this scene. I mean, just watch his face. You know, Kurt did a lot of looking at the camera, down the barrel, as they call it, in season 1. But that was something we decided to eliminate in season 2, just to kind of keep it more, a bit more realistic, a little less breaking the fourth wall. Oh, and how they shot that scene where he crams the candle into his mouth. They actually shot that in reverse, where they started with it in his mouth, Kurt coming in and pulling it out, and then reversed the film. And here we are at Ross's house. So yeah, again, we decided after this episode, well, it wasn't actually really a decision, it was a discussion, but it was actually already kind of in the scripts, that at this point we'd cut back on the high concept episodes of like being stuck in traffic, or everyone's at a party, and sort of just kind of move forward and follow the guys' lives forward from this point. This was shot in the lobby of the building, where we shot both Dr. Keebler's office and Nathan's office. In season 1, you'll notice we never saw Nathan's office in season 2, because we lost the connect at this space. So, David Pesner and his green face. He had a very clean face that day. Had an audition right after he shot that scene. He had the cleanest pores. David Whiting, who's also the guy who screams "No smoking in WeHo" in the second season finale. And here we are back in the gym scene. Yes, there is Tom Beards in his jeans. You know, we usually are very good. I'm so proud of this show. I mean, the attention to detail and everything is great, but this is one that slipped past us. He cracks me up every time. When I saw this scene, I was like, okay, I'm alright. Tom's gonna be fine. You know, there's like, can he do comedy? There was a lot of chatting on IMDb chat boards. Tom can't do comedy. Well, as a matter of fact, he can and did. Both seasons. So, there you go. I really like the sequence.
I don't think so.
And people were like saying, "Oh my God, they're gonna break up. They broke up. No, they're not. He's not coming back." But yes, he did come back, and I'm glad he did. And here is the return of Ryland Shelton as Damian Johns. I've seen you somewhere before. Now, keep in mind, he's seen his headshot on his desk. He's run into him in the bathroom. Almost seems like fate, doesn't it?
Wait, are you my 2 o'clock?
This scene, this episode actually is our most viewed episode, and the scene coming up is one of the main reasons why. I think Patrick Bristow had something to do with it. But the thumbnail of this episode with Ryland taking his clothes off, up to this point, we'd had very kind of virtuous thumbnails of, you know, scenes of the guys talking or whatever. And we debated a lot, and we thought, you know what, at this time you couldn't control the thumbnails. You just had to pick one of 3 thumbnails that YouTube gave you to choose from, and that's the one. After much debate, we decided, why not go for it? And I think that's one of the main reasons why this episode has had so many views. Also, a lot of blogs, Boy Culture and Wicked Gay Blog, and many blogs picked this one up for some reason. And yeah, it's our most highly viewed episode. Oh, and another thing, you know, we started to get a lot, like, about halfway through the middle of last year, this episode got about 30 to 40 hits every single morning. And I couldn't figure it out, and Arvin actually pointed out that to some people, the idea of having sex in an office with someone in a suit is erotic. And it's not like... I don't think people were tuning in for me, for the erotica in this scene. Ryland was very brave in this scene, and no fear. And I think it's a great scene. It was a great way to end the season. And I debated whether people would think, oh, this is insane, just would this ever really happen? But nobody really questioned it. And so yeah, blame the shrink. He's the one who told him. And there we go, the big fat kiss. Oh, it was a fun day on set, what can I say? And the return of Miss Lydia carrying lunch. Her expression cracks me up. That was actually Arvin's idea to have a hand in there, so you know, it wasn't just the mound of flesh. And that was it. That was season 1 of Old Dogs and New Tricks. I can't believe how this flew by, and I know, I think I covered everything. Just thank you to everybody who has acted in the show, who's been on our crew, but especially to our viewers who have given us 2 great seasons, and I hope we can pull off a 3rd. If you can, click on that little link up on the corner if you can support us in our next season. And thank you so much for watching, and see you soon.